My name is Matt, and I produce music as Machine Girl, and also, I guess like front the band Machine Girl. They're like interchangeable.
Yeah.
It
Who's
morphed.
who's missing today? Because I know there's two of there's you guys are a duo.
Yeah, so Sean is the drummer, and he actually moved back to New York a couple weeks ago. Um, I'm in Pittsburgh right now, and I'm leaving Pittsburgh in a few weeks, actually. But he already left, so he's not here. So
Uh,
that's why.
so can you give me a brief history about Machine Girl, like how you started and when Sean became part of it?
Yeah, so Machine Girl started in like 2012, probably. And I had the idea for Machine Girl since like 2011. Um, and it started off as just a solo project for the first few years. And then in 2015, Sean started playing with me during the for live shows. And before that, I was kind of just like DJing. Um, but I've known Sean since high school, and we've been in like bands together and stuff. So like him playing with me was something I wanted to do for like a while. Um, it was just kind of like waiting till it felt like the right time to add him into the equation. And that was like the same time I started adding vocals to the music as well.
Yeah. Why did you decide to like introduce like a drummer? And
Um, well, I wanted it to be like a band from like when I first thought of the idea. Like I just really like the idea of like a sort of like cyberpunk band in the sense of like instead of having like guitars and stuff, using just like electronics to create the distortion and like harmonic parts of the music. And then like there's something about the live drums, like live, that's just like so primal. And it's just a different vibe than like electronic beats.
do you feed off of like Sean when he's drumming during the live shows? Because like from like your older stuff to like now, you can see like a big difference on how you're performing. There's more like you're more chaotic and erratic on stage.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really high energy drummer, which you can tell from like videos if
Yeah,
you've already seen us live. Like he's pretty intense, and I definitely feed off of that. And yeah, just like I don't know, it's just like nice to have that reinforcement and like and an element of like this organic element that the drums bring, you know. um it just helps. I think it helps me, and I think it helps the audience kind of get a lot more into it. It's a lot more visceral
yeah.
than just like a backing track.
So, what made you gear towards more like a hardcore sound? Because in your early in Machine Girl's earlier stuff and RD's Kryptonite, it was a lot. It was a lot more dance than hardcore. What made you get into that?
Well, again, like I kind of always wanted to go in this direction, but I listen to all types of music, and I have all different moods when I'm making music. And so it's difficult. Like there's artists, that just make like the hardest, heaviest shit. And it's difficult for me to always like want to do that. And early on, when I was working on like Wolf Girl and early Machine Girl stuff, I I think also in that time period, I was like listening to a lot more dance music. So that was just naturally like what I was making. Um, but again, like I always wanted it to ultimately be a more kind of like super hard, crazy, chaotic thing. It was just like figuring out how to do that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully that answers.
What kind of groups or bands inspired you to go for more hardcore? Because like
Um,
digital hardcore is kind of a small genre, even though it's pretty old. What made you?
yeah, and to be honest, I never really listened to. I didn't know Atari Teenage Riot until I was like already making the stuff I was making that people were comparing uh, uh Machine Girl to. I'm way more into uh Lightning Bolt, and obviously Death Grips was a big inspiration.
I can hear the lightning bolt in there.
Who
I get that.
else? Like yeah, like Lightning Bolt is really big influences on my music. Boredoms, which is like another band that's pretty high energy and has like a lot of like crazy over the top like energy and music. And then like I was more influenced with like hard electronic stuff like Venetian snares and some of like the crazier Aphex Twin and Square Pusher stuff like breakcore. Um and then like a little bit of metal here and there. Dillinger Escape Plan was one of my favorite bands in high school, and their stuff is like extremely, their older stuff especially is extremely heavy and like intense. And so yeah, those are like my point of references when I was like, okay, I have to make something that can kind of like almost match this in terms of intensity, you know? And it was just like figuring out how to do that with a laptop because it's more difficult, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's a lot easier when you have amps and distortion pedals and guitars or basses.
I've noticed you use distortion pedals like in your electronic music. That's I've only seen like a couple people do that. What made you like get into that, or do you do that often?
I actually don't do that often. But I mean I play bass, so I have distortion pedals from like when I was playing bass a lot. Um and I'll sometimes do it, but a lot of times I just use the distortions that are in like the computer, like VSTs or in Ableton, you know?
Yeah. And
Especially early on I had almost like a philosophical reason that I did that because like especially when I was making like Wolf Girl and even to some extent Gemini, I was like really wanted to make everything in the laptop because I felt like in a weird way like making purely digital stuff was kind of more punk than like having like hardware and stuff, you know, because every people are much more likely to have access to a computer at this point than they are to like gear. So I was like, I'm gonna try to make this shit all with all the free software and like stolen software that I have and like nothing else. So
all right. So you have like this like almost like large obsession with like wolves and like wolf movie props. Where does that stem from? Because like especially in your Reddit, they're trying to find the source images you're using for like the album covers and everything.
yeah. To be honest, like um there's not really like a specific explanation for it. It just sort of like was things aligning and like and like yeah, there's not like much much of like a logical like explanation for it. It's more just like I just felt that the music, it matched the music, like the werewolf motif. And the closest thing to an explanation was like when I first started working on Wolf Girl specifically, um, I had I had like been at my parents' house at the time and I was up late and I had the TV on and like the movie Ginger Snaps had like randomly come on TV, and like I'd never seen it before, but I don't know what it was in that moment. And I was like kind of working on music and I started watching it and I was like, this movie is so sick. And like I like became obsessed with it for a short time and was like watching it over and over while I was like working on music. And and decided like I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this album like werewolf themed. And there was like an earlier track I made too that like months before that that also was sampling the movie The Howling. And that was just like a coincidence. And so yeah, the werewolf thing has just been like popping up again and again, and like it's just kind of stuck, you know?
Yeah, I noticed that on a lot of your music. You're taking inspiration from like anime. I'm getting some like fighting video games in there and some movies. What are some like big movies that, or not, yeah, big like movies that in video games that play a key role in the making of Machine Girl music?
Um, Jet Set Radio for the Dreamcast is a big one. That was like a huge moment for me as a kid playing that game. Akira, obviously, like Ghost in the Shell. The movie Machine Girl. I mean, that's where I got the name from. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think like what else. Like
Any Tekken? Any? Just had to ask.
actually, no, not really
Wow,
Tekken.
like
Yeah, I never
Ultimate.
had a PlayStation. I never owned a PlayStation, so I wasn't a Tekken kid.
Oh man.
Yeah, I do like Tekken, but I'm not good at it, and I haven't put that much time into it. But like uh Marvel versus Capcom 2 was like a huge game for me. And I think part of why I loved that game so much was because I loved, and again, it kind of goes along with a lot of my favorite art and music and movies and stuff where like I love like extremes and things that kind of are like overstimulating, over the top, like feels like everything is going to fall apart at any moment, but it doesn't. Like that game, for anyone who's played it, like that game is so chaotic and like insane, and it's like so fast, and there's like just lasers and characters like jumping in and out, and like I loved that. Like I loved like how fast and like insane it was, and it always felt like anytime you were playing, like you were playing this like final anime boss type fight,
Yeah,
like there were like dull moments. So that game was really big for me. And yeah, just like anything that's like super like adrenaline inducing is shit that I incorporate like on some level into Machine Girl music.
yeah, and I think your fans get that. I was looking through your subreddit, and they had made a game that was like Machine Girl inspired. It's almost like Doom, and
I
they have
saw that.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, I
cool.
was I was playing it this morning. It was kind of sick. Yeah. So I want to bring up like your I was looking through like your Facebook. I was going like a deep dive. But like you guys used to play like house shows and like college shows. Like how does that compare to like now when you're playing like venues, medium sized venues, small venues compared to like house shows, and how does that compare?
Um, I mean, it's like there's pros and cons to each. I mean, like with the house shows, definitely some of my favorite shows we ever played were house shows where, everything is simultaneously going completely wrong and completely right at the same time. Like it's just like total chaos, but it's like this kind of beautiful chaos.
Any like certain like
Uh,
moments worth noting?
Any moment. Well, there's like this. We played in Denver years ago, and it was like this insane, not very well planned show where this kid booked us booked us with like 8 other acts or something completely insane, and we didn't know till we like showed up. And when we're loading our gear in, he's like he like offered me like a vape of some sort, and I was like, what is this? And he's like, dude, it's DMT, man. You want to hear this? And I was like, no, we're like loading in. And like, why are you smoking DMT? Like, as we're loading our equipment in, and like, it was just like, it was like foreshadowing for just like how fucked up the night was going to be. And the kids that lived there, for some reason, entrusted this kid who booked the show to like run everything without them there. So like there was no one that lived at the house there, and like 200 kids showed up from like Denver and the surrounding area, and everything was running late. At some point we tried to find this kid to see like what was going on, and we ran into like one of his friends, and he was like, oh dude, that he took a bunch of shrooms and freaked out and like dipped. So like no one was running the show. And then so one of the kids that lives at the house comes home, and it's like there's 200 kids like hanging out everywhere. People are like, I don't know, spilling beer and like smoking cigarettes and weed like all over the place and like knocking things over. And it's just like a total mess. And so the guy who like lived there was like, all right, listen, like Machine Girl has to go on right now. And then the show is over. Like everyone has to leave. So we set up and we start playing, and like maybe a few songs in, everyone started like jumping up and down in the living room where we were playing. And suddenly like you could hear it and feel it, the whole floor went like, and the floor like collapsed, and like the support beams like snapped, and yeah, the show just ended like right there.
What?
It was really crazy, and like the whole floor was like concave like that.
That's insane.
Yeah, that was really crazy. And then the next time we came back to Denver, like 6 months or so later, and we played at some DIY spot that even had like concrete floors, but the guy still, because he had heard about it, he was like, I don't want anyone jumping around. I don't want that same shit happening. So that's just like a weird, like funny, like I don't know, like thing I guess we're notorious for in Denver now.
Wow, that's I've never heard I've heard of like events happening like that, but that's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was definitely something to cross off on like the bingo card of, I don't know, stupid DIY shit.
I was looking back to an old live show in Santa Barbara from 2016, and someone like in the crowd says California, and you respond back with fuck that state, or fuck this state.
Yeah.
Is there some type of because there's always been a rivalry with like California and the East Coast, or more specifically like LA and New York. Is there a difference like in the scenes between like California and like New York or the East Coast?
I mean, there definitely is. Like in that video and in that moment, I was just, being facetious or whatever. Like, I don't have a problem with California or people there, but I mean, yeah, there's a difference. Like, I will say, like, LA, the shows are really intense. Like, the crowds are very intense in a way that is unique to even just LA in my experience. Like, it's not even like really California. And New York crowds are also unique and intense in a different way. And maybe it's because I'm from New York and I have so many friends there. And so like when we play there, I like usually know a good portion of the crowd like personally, And so it feels a little bit like friendlier. Like the LA crowds sometimes feel like I'm like someone's just gonna like, I don't know, attack me or like tear my head off or something. Like it's just like a weird energy that it just feels like extra like unpredictable.
Yeah, it's because we're pretentious assholes. That's why. That's everybody from LA, but
Are you from LA?
yeah, no, I'm from LA. I live over here in Northern California now.
Mm.
Yeah. So in U Void, I believe, you have like a French bulldog that's heavily edited or like in the front cover. And I noticed through like your old Facebook photos and Instagram photos, like there's like a picture, there's like random pictures of French bulldogs. Is that like your dog, or was like where does that come from?
Well, it's actually a Boston Terrier.
Oh
Uh,
man.
yeah, but they're I mean, they're similar, but yeah, it's a Boston Terrier, and yeah, my mom got one like 10 years ago, and they're like really weird dogs, but they're really funny. And I just thought like, especially with that cover, like they're so harmless and goofy looking, and so I just thought it'd be funny. I just thought it was funny to like make it this like sort of like super soldier, like apocalyptic, like cyborg, like warrior looking thing. Cause like again, like they're dogs that are like this big, you know, they're tiny.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just I just like those dogs. So
All right. Yeah. So, in that, speaking of, stay on the topic of the same album, for you, Void Synthesizer, um, you don't have to answer this question if you want. I can cut it out later. But what do you think about Anthony Fantano's rating on it? Do you care about it, or is it just like,
I mean, it's annoying. It was annoying and like kind of sucks, but ultimately I don't really care. And ultimately, I guess I'm like glad he said anything about it because it's still like uh promoted us. And I saw a lot of people defending us, like being like telling him he's wrong and stuff. So for me, that's fine. Like I disagree with him on a lot of things. Like when I have checked out what he said about other albums, there's a lot of other albums that I'm like, I totally disagree with him on. So in a way, it kind of makes sense, you know?
yeah, a lot of people would agree with you.
Yeah. So it doesn't really like bother me that much. It would
Yeah.
have been nice to get a good review, but it is what it is.
So, so is there any type of like way you prepare yourself to like make music, because it's like you said, it's very like overstimulating, chaotic. Do you get overwhelmed sometimes when you're making your own music, or are you just like used to it by now?
Yeah, I guess like I'm kind of used to it. I Yeah, like I don't know. I don't really get into like a specific like sort of headspace before I start working on music when I am gonna start working on like a track or something. Um and it also depends on like what I'm working on, because for the more like band stuff where or like at least stuff with like the vocals, that I usually have to kind of get more into like a specific headspace to like work on it or to like write, like especially like lyrics and vocal parts. But the otherwise, like a lot of times when I'm making shit, I kind of like do like sketches where I'll just kind of like come up with a ton of ideas and then maybe only take like a few of those that I when I revisit them, like the ones that stand out to me, then I'll take those and like continue to like flesh them out and like turn them into like songs as opposed to just like these ideas, you know? Um, but yeah, it's funny, like honestly, some of like the heavier, crazier songs I've made like in the morning when I'm waking up and like I don't know, it's like it's not like I'm like in some like dark headspace or like it's like some like edgy thing. It's like a lot of times like it's sunny out and it's like a nice day and like I'm comfortably like sitting on a couch or something, and so it's kind of random. It's kind of random, and I for me it's like I try to like churn out a lot of ideas, and then like the best things are like when I get into like some sort of like zone and don't even like realize what I'm doing, and then like hours go by and then there's like a finished song. you know? That's been some of my favorite shit that I've done.
Yeah.
So
And like for your live shows, like I've noticed like you dress up a lot, you put on different costumes and some can be like really gnarly, really like exposing and like bloody. What inspires you to do that? Is that like a way just um to just like add to the aesthetic of the music, or is there other reason to that?
I enjoy doing it, and I think it does add to the vibe and the energy and aesthetic of the music. I like dressing up. Um, I wanna do it more and, uh, like, get better at it almost, like, because a lot of times I would do it really quickly and it would be sorta, like, half-assed. Um, but it also helps me get more in the zone, to feel like I'm, like, I don't know, not the when you put a costume on or something, it does, like, change the way that you act and the, uh, like, it does help you kinda get in the moment and become, like, some other version of yourself, and that's what I try to do when I dress up.
Yeah. Yeah. And for your artwork, for the artwork for the covers, you do you design a lot of those, like for like your promos, and so so as like a graphic designer, graphic artist, whatever you want to call it, do you do you have like a preference, like when it comes to it? Do you like enjoy making like the artwork more, or do you enjoy making music more, or does it just go hand in hand with each other?
Yeah, I would say it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get in the zone and work on, uh sometimes I'm, like, totally just in music zone, and I can't do, like, any visual stuff, and sometimes it's the opposite, you know? So,
Yeah.
it goes back and forth.
No, they're really cool. I've always liked them. It's always like it's like overstimulation. Like with my generation or our generation, like overstimulation's like huge. We're just
Yeah, exactly.
throwing a bunch of stuff in a screen.
Yeah.
Uh so you're pretty vocal on your Instagram about like social problems that are going on right now, like police brutality, just sexism in like the music industry. Out of like, were you aware what was happening with like Burger Records in California, like in the like earlier in spring, where like they shut down this whole record because they found out they were like extremely predatory? What do you think about that stuff, like in the music industry, especially like in the DIY scene or underground scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that people are, like, speaking up about that stuff and that that mentality and, like, predatory men that get into these positions of power and then, like, abuse that and abuse women and people and exploit a lot of people. I think it's really good that people are speaking up and that people are held accountable now, like that. I think that unfortunately has been a the way that the music industry on all micro and macro levels, it's been like that since the beginning of the music industry, like just and not even just the music industry, like the all entertainment industries. It's always like these gross, power hungry, predatory men at the top, and they always like without fail abuse that, and um I think that that's a really good thing that's being pushed back against, and I hope that something new like replaces that, some new model.
Yeah. What do you think artists can do? Just not even just for like any like things that are going on within the music industry, but just like political problems or just problems in general that are going on in society, like police brutality. Like you, like I said, you're pretty vocal about it. What more do you think you can do or other artists can do to just help fight the fight?
I mean, obviously, like using our platforms to like signal boost and promote like information and charities and fundraisers and calls to action and stuff. That's really huge. I think putting it into your art is important. Um, and I think like, walking the walk, like when it's time to like actually have to step up and like physically or however get involved. And if you're telling people to do that, like do it yourself. Um, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And a lot of people like to call like Machine Girl like the soundtrack of the apocalypse. Do you see that? Like, what do you are like? Do you are you someone who's for like not chaos, but like in a way like chaos or more like organization? Because like some artists can differ from like their music, just like they can be very like calm, shy, collective people, but make the most like extroverted music. Where do you
Yeah.
find yourself in there?
Chaos versus like order, basically.
Yeah.
I would say like more on the side of chaos, but not totally like anarchy. Like, I don't know. Like I don't really have an answer, especially because you bring up like about the apocalypse and like where the world is heading and where society is heading and stuff. And it's things are just so I mean, things are chaotic. Like chaos is already like r- is what is driving us. It is like secretly, I think, the conspiracy of like why shit is just so fucked up. And it's like weird because the chaos, the underlying chaos of like of of the entire world and all the like the systems that we've created that like are ultimately,
They're just imploding on each other. They're
yeah, and,
coming to
and like yeah, and like because especially like you look at like QAnon and people that believe in the Illuminati and stuff, and like I think in a way that's a much more reassuring thought that there might be this secret group that's actually running everything and there's a plan. But the reality is there's no plan. Like nobody is. It's just all chaos and like to and I don't know what the. I mean, of course, like the correct or like the thing that we would have to do or the thing we do have to do at some point or on some level is like you know people, the masses, whatever, need to like fight back against like these systems that are just self-sustaining that we all just like feed. But it's like weird how order, like people in positions of power and governments and stuff, they are eh, clamping down more and more and creating this false sense of order,
yeah.
through like the rise of nationalism and fascism. And it's like not getting to the root of any of the issues. It's just sort of like trying to plug the holes on like a dam that's like getting ready to burst or something.
Yeah. Do you
And
think it's like anything that can be fixed? Like, or do you think it's like fucked beyond repair?
you know, I don't know. I don't know. And I think that people that say one way or the other, I think that we all have to live with a thought that it can be better, because otherwise, what's the point? But I also think that we can't fool ourselves into thinking that things staying the same are just going to work themselves out. And I do think that that's the mentality that a lot of people in positions of power want us to have. I think that's like a big part of what the Joe Biden like presidency is like them being like, okay, everybody go back to your, lives and don't worry about anything we're doing. Like we're gonna fix it
Yeah,
all. It's like
yeah,
they're still the people that are like putting us into these positions and fucking the world up and fucking the environment up and fucking us up. Like, yeah, it's crazy, but it's like it's it's a it's also like things are just so crazy right now in so many ways. It's hard to know like what's even like the first step, you know, to take. And yeah, that like as I've worked on as I've been doing Machine Girl and working on music, and as I get older, like the music and the lyrics have become more, I would say, uh like less directly like we have to all like fuck shit up and blah blah blah, and more kind of like positing like questions and like and sort of like raising awareness about things without necessarily like having a thesis on like how to solve that, because it's like I don't feel like I'm have the answers.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. And you
It's
met
like, sorry, the last thing I'll just
yeah.
say about that to clarify that is I feel like my music is becoming a bit more like observational than it is like a call to action. Not that there is none, but it's just it's it's again, it's like it's just the overwhelming that how overwhelming everything is.
Yeah. Do you think people to put too much pressure on like artists to like to like have a specific message or like to like do more? Do you think that it creates too much pressure? Because I don't know, because like I feel like some people like idolize musicians too much where they expect them to do certain things and when like they don't, it like throws everything out of proportion.
Yeah, I think that I think that within like there's the saying kill your idols. Like you have to realize that artists are people, and yeah, artists are people, and like we're not these like super hero perfect beings with like all our morals like perfectly figured out and set in stone, and we've never made mistakes. Like every artist, even like the most like outspokenly, you know uh radical one, like I'm sure that they have fucked up along the way, and are not are not perfect, and I think sometimes that there is, and I'm sure it's mostly younger people, younger fans of these artists that do put unrealistic expectations onto them, onto artists. Having said that, I also think that, and it's something that I have been thinking a lot more about in the last like year or so, especially like since COVID has hit. But I think also as an artist, you do have to kind of step up to the plate. And once you're in a position where people are looking up to you, and especially it's like younger, it's basically kids looking up to you, like you do kind of have to work on yourself, like you can't, if there's like weird, if there's just like shitty things that you used to do that you felt like you could get away with being an asshole or something, it's like you kind of have to like work on that and try to improve yourself to like be a role model. I think being a role model is a real thing, and I think it is important, especially now, where I think a lot of younger people are especially confused and scared and like not hopeful, especially like I can't imagine being like, I don't know how old you are, but being still in college or in high school or something and having to go through COVID is like so fucked.
Yeah, no, it is.
Are you in college?
Yeah, I'm in college right now.
Are you in a dorm?
No, I have an apartment with my older brother, so thankfully I don't have to deal with that. But yeah, you do bring up COVID. And as an artist, how has COVID like just like changed? Because it's changed people's lives, either for the better or for the worse. How has it changed you as an artist? Because yeah, you've
Uh
had to gone through to doing live shows to doing shows on Second Life or I've seen
yeah.
some on Minecraft.
Yeah. Um yeah, it's been weird and it sucks. It's really shitty. Like, I mean, I miss shows and so much. I mean, nothing compares to the real thing. Um I do feel really lucky though, because I am self-employed. Like I've been able to live off Machine Girl now for like a little while, and before COVID hit. So like, even though it was kind of scary the first few months, like I didn't lose my job. I didn't I was still able to work on music and put music out and make money from people buying stuff off Bandcamp and people buying merch. Um and so I have managed to do okay, like financially, and not be in like a scary place. I know that there's a lot of artists that don't have that luxury. Um, but yeah, it's mostly just been like the mental toll that it's taken. Like I don't know when we're gonna play live again, you know. I'm not I've kind of checked out of this year. Like I don't think that Machine Girl, I think if at the earliest it'll be like the fall if we're really lucky, but I don't think it'll be till like next year,
Yeah.
which is really fucked up, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and just going off the topic of just like everything being fucked and everything, and digital hardcore. So like, and you're creating, you're like you're saying in the very beginning, you want to create music that was just like the basis was you're trying to make music completely on the computer, totally digitized. So that being said, something that originally music was something very analog to something being on the computer. What do you think about the theories of like us like living in some type of simulation that if you can replicate music on a computer, what's to say you can't eventually, or we haven't yet replicated life on a computer?
Yeah, I it could be, and I think ultimately it's like it doesn't really make a difference. Shit feels very real, so who cares?
Yeah.
I don't think it's like the Matrix, or it's like you get out and you're like, and like it's some big conspiracy and you can go back in and like fix this or something. Like I just think if we are in a simulation, it's probably something that is so far advanced that it doesn't even it's indistinguishable from reality. but reality is at the same time, like, this is real, you know? I feel things, like, and I experience things, like, it's real, you know? It might be, like, created, it might be, like, a creation, some sort of, like, whatever at that point, synthetic would even I don't even know what synthetic would mean at that point, but if this is synthetic, I can't tell, you know? And who knows, like, maybe we're just in this endless, like, you know, Russian nesting doll sort of thing of like virtual realities. Like, who's to say that if you don't die, when you die, you just like go out into the next one and then to the next one, it just never ends, you know?
Yeah, there can be an
Like,
infinite like simulations. Like who's just yeah, exactly.
yeah. So that's like not something that I like it's not something that super I keeps me up at night or anything.
Yeah. I just have a quick question. You turned your
Yeah.
camera, and I'm looking at your whiteboard
Oh
behind you,
yeah.
bro. Are
Yeah.
those just like dicks, dude? Are those like just
Yeah. Well, Dixon, yeah,
the
that's my
human
friend.
anatomy? The human.
Yeah. My friend drew all those and I haven't erased them. So,
All right. So just last thing, what as audience and fans, what should we be expecting from Machine Girl in the coming year or years in terms of music and just media that you're putting out?
um, you can expect I have like the prolapse stuff coming out this year, which is like my side project or other project with Bonnie Baxter from Kill Alters. We have a lot of that coming out. Machine Girl, I'm working on a video game soundtrack for a game called Neon White, and that'll be out I think at the end of the year. Um, and then possibly other things. So we'll see.
All right. Lastly, do you have any message for people that are just trying to start bands, especially now during this COVID time? Any like words of advice that you wish you would have known when you started out?
Well, I think things are so unique because of COVID again, but I would say, yeah, now is the time. Like, if you're gonna start a band, if you're thinking about it, if you're hesitating, like, do it now because especially like when you start, your band is gonna suck now while you're just playing in your garage, you know? And by the time like shows can be a thing again, you'll be better. And like I think the more live music and underground shit that we can have going on the other side of this, the better. Like, I encourage anyone thinking about starting a band or making starting to make music to just do it.
All right, great, awesome. Well, thank you, Machine Girl, for sitting down with me and talking to me about music. Really appreciate it. And I really, yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, of course.